Learning from history. That is going to be the topic of this episode of Chi Life. So at the moment I am in Sarajevo, and specifically I'm at the old abandoned bobsled track. It's actually not that abandoned. There's actually quite a few tourists walking around here, but it's certainly not being used for bobsledding. So it was built for the 1984 Winter Olympics. And then after that, things got a bit messy in this part of the world, and there was a war, and so the bobsled track stopped being used. But there's still quite a lot of it here, and it's become a bit of a tourist attraction to walk around. And plus, it's just really nice actually here out in nature up in this hill above Sarajevo. So I've been quite enjoying walking around. And as I talk, I'm going to show you some footage of this track. There's several tracks that all weave into, around each other. Hopefully you'll enjoy that. Maybe if you're not so interested in what I'm talking, maybe you'll enjoy the view of the track, or maybe you'll be interested in what I have to talk about as well. So where should I begin? I think I will go this way. And so this vlog is, in a way, it's kind of a carry on from the last vlog where I talked about similarities in history and also differences in history and how that shapes the energy of people and places. This isn't quite the same topic though. It's more about the importance of learning from history and some nuances around that as well. I hope you'll find it interesting. There's this old saying that if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. And again, one of the things that I've found traveling around these different places, there's just more nuance and more detail to be discovered from actually being somewhere where history took place, and also being with the people who either some of them experienced parts of that history themselves, or they have lived with the downstream effects of that history, and so they have their own view of it and their own thoughts about it. And it just gives a much richer experience and understanding. And as I've done this, I found little details and perspectives coming out that I didn't have as great an appreciation of before. I mean, certainly I knew a lot of this history. I've studied it from books or from videos and things before, so it's not like I hadn't heard about the history of these parts of the world. But there's things that come out from actually being there and being with real people who are connected to it. And one of the things as well, also in terms of some of these nuances, details, because everywhere that I've been, sometimes one of the things I like to do when I arrive in a new city is go on a walking tour. And it's a nice way to just kind of orient myself to the city, to find out some of the most famous places, and again to discover some of the history generally from a local's perspective. Normally it's going to be a local conducting the tour, and so they'll tell it from a local's perspective. Also sometimes I'll go to some museums and learn about some of the history there. And a lot of these countries that I've been in lately, they've been involved in a lot of the same history because they're next to each other, but from different sides or having different perspectives on that same history, often involving, the same people, same events, but they talk about them differently. And it's often not so much that one is right and another is wrong, but rather that they have a different story that they tell about, not necessarily the facts of what occurred, but about what that meant. And it's been interesting also, again, talking to different people, and as they've described different things about sometimes the same events, sometimes the same people who crossed, between these different areas, that sometimes they'll say, oh, the people over in this other neighboring country, they think, whatever it is they say, they think this about this event or these people. And it's like, I thought to myself, I was just there and I was talking to people in that country, and I've also talked to people previously from that country, and that's not what they think. They're sort of putting words and perspectives into their mouths that they think those other people think this. It's like, it's not quite what they think. They've got a different view. Have you talked to anyone there lately? And that's interesting too. People assuming what other people think about something as well. In terms of some of the little nuances and details that I've picked up, I'm not going to go too much into exactly what they are, but one of the things that I've noticed for some of the history, and some of this is going back over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, not just some of the more recent history that this part of the world is more known for. Some of it, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and some of these broad patterns of history. And it's just really stood out to me how similar some of those patterns are to some things that are going on in the world today. It's like, now it's a modern analog that's going on today. It's not the exact same thing, but so similar, so many, similarities. And broadly speaking, we're making a lot of the same mistakes as a society, or as our politicians, our politics are making so many of the same mistakes that were made previously. And it's kind of like, do these people not realize this? We've all heard that saying, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. Surely we've all heard that. Do we not pay attention to some of this and think, well, when as a society we dealt with this issue this way previously, it led to bad results. Maybe let's not do that this time. Maybe let's do something else. It seems like, unfortunately, so many of the lessons of history are forgotten or slip by. And that's, I think, one of the many reasons why traveling, experiencing different things in person is so valuable, because it does give us this richer appreciation, perspective that can hopefully then help us to, at the very least, live our own lives in a way that is healthier, happier, more harmonious. And if we have some influence over, other things going on in the world, maybe help steer society as a whole towards a healthier, happier, more harmonious future as well. Hopefully that's what comes from gaining a better perspective. There's another aspect to this as well, though, which I've noticed again, looking particularly at some of the modern politics, and it's really given me a much better perspective on some of the things that are occurring politically at the moment, where some of the things that different political factions are pushing towards. As an outsider, for me, I kind of think, well, why on earth would you want to do that? That's like, how do they think that's a good idea? But when you understand the history better, you can look back and go like, I see. They're actually getting this idea, and this is shaping their view from their history. They've looked back at how things were at different points in history and go like, you know what, we could do this, we could do that for some reason. And that history, sometimes going back hundreds of years, is shaping what they want to do now. But unfortunately, again, so often not in a healthy way. Often it's about, hey, when things were like this, we had more power, we had more influence. Maybe we could give ourselves more power, more influence again. But ignoring the other parts of that then led to more power struggles, more conflict. Is that what we want? So I don't think it's enough just to learn from history. The question is, what do you learn from history? Because two people can look at the same history, and one can come up with a view of that history and go like, well, clearly we don't want to do that because that led to bad outcomes. And another can look at that history and go like, oh, let's do more of that. Let's do that again because that gave some person or some group an upper hand and more power. And let's do that. Not a good lesson, but from the same history, from the same facts. And so there's this other thing that comes in, which is our overall character, our overall intent, and that then shapes what lessons we'll learn and what we'll do with what we learn from history. Now, again, I will tie this into Qigong. These vlogs are, they are drifting a bit away from Qigong. I'm just sharing some of my thoughts, experiences, I guess, while I'm traveling. But I can connect this to Qigong as well, where, again, if you followed the vlog for a while, you will have noticed, a few videos at different points where I've talked about things relating to some of the dangers that can be present in Qigong practice. Because particularly for people who get deeper into Qigong, it's, for the most part, Qigong is incredibly safe, very beneficial. Like the chances of harm are really, really low. But if you're getting deeper into it, the deeper you go, the more chance you could encounter something harmful. And so it's helpful for people to understand that, I think. Now, how does this tie in with what I was saying about learning lessons from history? In almost all, I wouldn't say absolutely all, but almost all cases that I have seen of people who have really done themselves some significant harm from Qigong practice, and unfortunately, I have seen a fair few. Now, the reason why I've seen a fair few is, again, most people doing Qigong won't come into any issues, and so most people are doing Qigong in a casual or even semi-serious way aren't going to come across other people who've harmed themselves with Qigong. But having been deeply involved in Qigong for several decades, having it be a huge part of my life for that period of time, and having been teaching widely and had contact with lots and lots of people, means that I have come across a significant number of people who have harmed themselves through their Qigong practice. Pretty much universally, it's been because of their underlying intent. It hasn't been so much about the Qigong practice itself. It's been about the character, the intention, the mindset that they have brought to their practice, where they have tended to become obsessive about the practice. And often they have had an intention of essentially trying to give themselves superpowers. And I think I've made a vlog specifically about that in the past, where it's like, I'm going to do Qigong to give myself superpowers and gain power. And that's so similar to people, looking at lessons from history and going, I could use that to get some power. And it ends up just creating harm. And you, again, bring this across to Qigong. Practices that can be beautiful and beneficial and harmonious, but you bring the wrong intention to it, and it ends up causing yourself harm. I think there's an interesting parallel there. And quite what more to say about that, I'm not sure. Other than when it comes down to it, underneath everything that we do, so much of what's really important is our underlying character, our underlying intention. And I think that's worth being aware of about ourselves and aware of in the people that we interact with as well. Anyway, those are just some of my thoughts today as I'm in this interesting place. Again, not just the bobsled track is pretty interesting, but not just that, the nature really is beautiful here on a beautiful summer's day. So, all right, I look forward to seeing you on another one soon.